guys, Chris here from the AMP Life. Welcome back to yet another video. And in today's video, in part 2 of the AMP Life, season 2 of the AMP Life, we're going to be talking about residual limb care. So residual limb is the appropriate term, otherwise known as the STUMP. I don't particularly care what it's called, but I know for some people it can be offensive. It's not appropriate to talk about a STUMP. I might refer to the two interchangeably, force of habit, but the correct name is our residual limb. So it's so important to take care of that because so much of our quality of life depends on our mobility to live pain-free and free of infection. 4 years ago, I made a similar video about residual limb skin care. And although a lot of what I said in that video is still highly relevant, I have made 1 or 2 changes in how I take care of that skin. And in particular, I think the one thing I've changed the most is less is more. And I mean, in that sense, I mean using less chemicals, and that simplicity, how important that is in order to facilitate a ritual that doesn't become an issue or a hassle in the mornings and the evenings. And I cannot overstate the importance of having a ritual, a consistent ritual, to take care of the residual limb skin. And absolutely, since I've done that, I've had very little to no issues for long periods of time. So a tip I'm going to give right up front, and I'll be giving a few tips throughout this talk, is to the importance of protecting the sound side. For those of us that still has a sound side, the good leg, the healthy leg. I've had opportunities to, for example, go water skiing, and I've decided against it, or to learn how to run with a prosthetic. I've chosen not to do it because I don't want to compromise the sound side. I feel that if I do compromise the sound side, it's really going to undermine my mobility. So I sacrifice a little bit, but I gain a lot on the other side in terms of having a healthy leg on the one end and a good prosthetic healthy leg on the other side. So I've made a few notes that I'm going to have to stick to, otherwise I'm going to lose my way just a little bit. So another tip I want to give is for those of you guys that are considering an amputation is to pay really careful attention to the surgeon that'll be doing the amputation, because the underside of the residual limb is so important. I mean, it was never designed to walk on without a foot, certainly not the skin, or to take those kind of pressures. So it's so important that that skin or that shape, and that it is round as possible and as receptive as possible to a socket, a prosthetic socket, that it is prepared as good as possible. There are a few aspects to protecting the residual limb. I just want to mention a few of them. First, I've already mentioned, which is to prepare for a good amputation, to preserve the area that will take the pressure the most as well as is possible. The second is absolutely to have a well-fitting socket. That is possibly one of the most important aspects of protecting your residual limb. The third is to have good prosthetics. That's the foot setup, the knee. If you have one, use the best possible prosthetics that you can. I've always held that it's probably one of the most important investments we'll do, and we shouldn't skimp on that. In one of my videos, I think I said, budget for a good prosthetic leg and then double it and spend accordingly. Then, very importantly, to have good gear on there and to have it aligned properly by your prosthetist, who's such an important person in our lives. So make sure that your alignment of your equipment is really good. And then something that's often neglected that also surprises me is to wear quality shoe wear. I'm often amazed at how we can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, whatever your currency is, and then we use inadequate shoe wear. It just kind of compromises everything, negates the quality of or the money we've spent on good prosthetics. And then a very important one is a liner. So I've got an example of my liner here, which I'm going to use to illustrate today how I take care of my residual limb. It's an Ossur Iceross Seal-In X liner. It has a patented material in the inside. After using many different liners, I found that this liner by far has served me the best and has given me the best protection against skin. I'll link all these products in the description below. By the way, none of these products that I'm going to be talking about, the creams, etc., are sponsored. These are just products I've learned to use over time, and I'll link them down below as well. So that's with regards to the equipment. Then with regards to the residual limb itself, I think it's so important to establish a hygiene ritual, both in the mornings and in the evenings. One, two, I think to use the right lubricants and lotions is so important. That sits between the skin and the actual liner, and I'm going to say more about that in a moment. So using the right product, to have proper gait training. If we have an inadequate walk, it's going to put more pressure in areas of the residual limb that will undermine the integrity of the skin. Knowing when to rest is so important, when to take a break, and then something that's really worked for me is to make sure that the skin gets a bit of fresh air and, if possible, sun occasionally. Not too much sun, but certainly a little bit to help that skin repair naturally. All right, guys, now I'm going to go through the ritual that I have in the morning, and this is the important part that I think I really wanted to get to, the morning and the evening ritual that I use on my residual limb. So I'm going to go through these products. I'm going to show you how I actually use them. So first of all, let's take a look at all the products that I use. The first is something that is known in our country as Vaseline. I bought this in Belgium when I worked there last year. It's called Purol Ointment, but it's very similar to Vaseline. I'll put that in the description as well. The second product I have is something called Epimax, which is a moisturizer, quite a very natural moisturizer that I use as a lubricant. I've heard people say that is not such a good idea, but for me it absolutely does the job. As I said, I've had no issues in the past, very little issues in the past 4 years, and since I've had this system going, no issues. The third is a sanitizing spray. This is actually something I bought during COVID, which contains a little bit of alcohol, and I'll explain why. This is a cream ointment called Bactroban. It has antibacterial qualities, which I use sparingly, but occasionally, and I'll explain why too. Then I have a box of alcohol swabs, and there's little swabs that they use in hospitals in little pouches, which I don't use every day, but I'll explain when they are needed. Then I have skin wipes that are also used on babies' bums to keep them healthy and clean and moisturized to an extent. They're very soft on the skin, and it contains a measure of aloe vera, which is something with a plant with natural healing properties, and then just a clean towel. There are other products I've got here. These are products made by the companies themselves that make the prosthetics. This is one by Ossur called the lubricant spray. These work too. I find that I have used these and they've been fine. It's nothing wrong with it. It's simply that I've found something that works for me, and I think that's what's important here, is that you find something that works for you. I'm simply trying to share what has really worked out well for me in the hope that it might work for you too. You know, since I've used these products, I was traveling early in the year, and there was a time we were in Barcelona, and we walked for 5 days between 15 and 20 kilometers every single day, me with my prosthetic. That's a lot. I never had an issue, not one issue. And I think the methods I use, that it does have a lot to do with it. So I think 3 points that are really important. The system that I use is simple. I do it consistently, and I keep it as natural as possible. So simplicity, consistency, and natural. I keep these products, some of them next to my bedside and some in the bathroom. It's important to have them in both the locations, and it always travels with me wherever I go, no exceptions, even if it's for an overnight trip. So let's go through the morning ritual that I have. I like to call it a ritual because it's what I do every day. That's, I think, the appropriate wording. So in the morning, the first thing I do is I take my liner and I give it a good wash. I rarely use soap. Every once in a while I'll use a natural soap to give it a good clean. Although I'd done it the previous evening, and I'll get to that in a moment, I still give it a bit of a rinse or a wash in the morning, just to give it that extra, make sure that it's absolutely clean. Then when I go from so I do this absolutely in sequence. When I go from washing the liner, I get into the shower, I clean the residual limb with a natural soap. Anything will really do, as long as it's not filled with all kinds of harmful chemicals. Then after the shower, I make sure that it's dry, not too much. You don't want to damage the skin by wiping too hard. Just make sure that tap it down and it's nice and dry. What I do next is I'm going to imagine that this is in fact my residual limb. So the first thing I do is I use my Vaseline products, and I take a bit of this and I apply it over the end that takes the most pressure in the socket, and I give a thin layer to it. Now I'll link an article down here on the value, the qualities of Vaseline, and I was astounded to find out just how good it is in our skins, and for all the reasons that it is. And since I've been using it, I've had zero issues, absolutely no issues. And I think it's in combination with the other things that I do, but it definitely has made a difference. The next thing I do is, again, imagining this is my residual limbs, I use this natural cream. It's water-based, and I'll apply this on the residual limb all the way to the top, a bit more at the bottom, and then not so much at the top. Not too much, because then it's going to squelch around, but not too little, so that there's contact on this of the skin on the liner without any lubricant, because that will chafe the skin and create a little hole. And that's basically it. And then I slip on the liner, and that little ritual will work well for the entire day until I go to bed at night. I have a little tip again. In the mornings, I try and get my socket on as quickly as possible, not to move around too much with the residual limb hanging, as it swells and it gets a bit more difficult to get into the socket. So I try and get into the shower as early as possible, go through the ritual, get the socket on, so that if there's any swelling, it happens inside of the liner and inside of the socket. And you don't have that issue with I'm sure you've experienced that, trying to put your residual limb into the socket and it's too tight, which is very, very uncomfortable, creates too much pressure inside the socket. Right, that's the morning. So in the evening, when I go to bed, I've got some of these products with me next to my bed. The first thing I do is I take off the liner and I give it a wash again with an organic soap, wipe it down clean. If I think it's necessary, if I've sweated quite a bit, I will then use this spray, this alcohol spray. I'll give it a light spray, and afterwards wipe it down with a damp cloth. Just leave it on for about 30 seconds to kill most of the bacteria on there, and give it a wipe down with a damp cloth. I then, on my residual limb itself, I wipe down the limb or wash it, but often if the bathroom is too far away, I'll take the damp clean cloth, and wipe it down very gently. Then I use these wipes, and this is the baby bum wipes with a bit of aloe vera, and I'll just wipe down, and this is the last thing I do before I go to sleep. I'll just wipe it down very, very, very gently. And again, as I said, since I've been doing this ritual, I've had zero issues. I think it's important to find something with natural ingredients like the aloe vera in here, and that has served me really well. So what happens if there are ingrown hairs and little sores, and we need to clean them in the mornings and in the evening? And this is where these little alcohol wipes come in. And all I do is simply I take one of these little wipes, I look at the infected area. I never apply too much pressure on the infected area, but what I do is I'll wipe it down quite well with this little alcohol swab to kill any remaining bacteria if I can, and wipe it down again with a damp towel. And then I'll take this ointment called Bactroban, which has a bit of antibiotic in it. This is why I don't recommend using it too often. I take a little bit and I'll apply it around the infected area. And I find that normally takes care of it so quickly. Within a day or two, it starts disappearing. Of course, rest is the best thing. Often what I do before I go on a long trip is I will rest the limb for a day or two to make sure that it's in tip-top condition for the trip. And again, sun and fresh air, two of the best healing agents that I can recommend. Nature. And as I said, with this procedure, I've been able to walk, and I've had, again, I know I keep on saying this because it seemed so unlikely for some people, zero issues for so long, and hence why I wanted to pass it on to you guys. So that's it, guys. That's it for today. I hope you find this helpful. I have had a lot of comments and people asking me for more practical tips, so I thought I'd focus on that a little bit. And if you have any tips of your own, please post them here. Please subscribe to the channel. It really motivates me. It's not a monetized channel, but it really motivates me to make more videos, to see that people find value in it. And the best way to see that is through subscription, through a like, and by leaving a comment below. I try and answer all those comments. Sometimes I just don't get to it, but through work and doing this. But I do try and get to the comments the best I can. And just something about the next video I'll be putting out. I've been busy with a new Ossur, working with a new Ossur power knee, which has been, even though I have the Ossur Rheo right now, which I thought was the ultimate in prosthetic legs, I've been using the Ossur power knee, and such a game changer. It's just next level, and I'd like to show you how it works and explain why I say that. It's one of those, you don't know what you don't have until you have it, and then you don't know what you have until you don't have it situations. But the step up from something as good as I've been have, the Ossur Rheo Exceed, to the power knee is quite astonishing. All right, and then just remember, I will start live streaming soon. I haven't gotten to that yet, and that was just a time issue, but I'm all set up with my live streaming studio, and we'll start live streaming soon so that we can have real-time chats. All right, guys, that's it. So all the best with your skincare. Let me know how that's going for you, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Ciao.